Hello everyone, this is CRH Films, and this film is called Leave the World Behind. A series of mysterious yet terrifying events is unfolding across America. Ships wash ashore, planes crash into the sea, and self-driving cars navigate without control. The film begins with a panoramic view of morning in New York. Amanda, suffering from insomnia since early morning, adds to the chaos in the apartment. She suddenly decides to go on a vacation with her family, even managing to find and rent a house. Her husband, Clay, just woke up and doesn't fully grasp what's happening. Not wanting to spoil the mood early in the morning, Clay agrees. Meanwhile, Amanda, standing by the window, expresses how much she hates people. A few hours later, the entire family is in the car, heading towards an unexpected getaway. However, Rose, the daughter, is not thrilled with the idea. The remote area they are heading to has no internet, preventing her from watching the latest episode of her favorite series. Upon arrival, the children immediately head to the pool. Clay's relaxation starts with disappointment as he finds the bar doors closed. Meanwhile, Amanda goes to town to buy supplies, encountering a man named Danny loading his pickup with supplies, seemingly preparing for an apocalypse. After lunch and some romantic moments, while the kids swim in the pool, the family goes to the beach. Archie, encountering bikini-clad girls, experiences the nuances of adolescence. Meanwhile, Rose is disturbed by an oil tanker heading straight for the shore. A few minutes later, she mentions that the tanker shows no intention of stopping. Only when the floating city is a few dozen meters from the shore, people's survival instinct kicks in. They hide their phones and decide to leave the beach before it's too late. At the exit, the guard mentions similar incidents along the coast. Returning home, Amanda sees real deer in the yard. After dinner, the children go to bed, and the parents, with a glass of wine, play Jenga. The lovely evening is interrupted by a knock on the door. It's the house owner, George, and his daughter, Ruth. They explain that they came to stay overnight as New York lost power, and, on top of that, there is no cell reception. Climbing to the 14th floor is too difficult and time-consuming, so the father and daughter decided it was more rational to come here. To compensate for the inconvenience, the homeowner offers to refund half the amount paid. George opens a chest with heated drinks, revealing a gun and an envelope with money in one of the drawers. He hands over $1,000 as compensation. Amanda explains to her husband that she doesn't want to stay under the same roof with strangers, but Clay, realizing he just lost half of their vacation, decides to help the uninvited guests. A quite tasty cocktail prepared by George from his own supplies immediately convinces Clay. However, Amanda regards the so-called host with more suspicion. She asks several questions, but the conversation is interrupted by the TV, turned on by Ruth. The broadcast reports that America is slowly but surely facing a crisis. The couple realizes that the unexpected guests were likely telling the truth. Everyone disperses to their rooms to finally rest after such an eventful day. The main characters don't notice as a message about a cyber attack on the entire country briefly appears on the TV. In the morning, Rose wakes Amanda urgently. The teenager needs to watch the latest episode of the Friends series. With no internet and a familiar childhood TV broadcast, Amanda sends her daughter to the living room. She checks her phone and sees several notifications stating that hackers are involved in all these strange events. She wakes her husband to show him the news, but the mysterious notifications disappear. To make sense of the situation, the couple decides that Clay will go to town to gather information while Amanda stays with the children. Meanwhile, Rose observes the deer again, this time noticing there are slightly more of them. In George's house, he talks about the computer virus I Love You, which likely caused the communication blackout. The virus was written in 2000 by two teenagers, causing massive losses for corporations. The man decides to visit the neighbors, maybe they know something. Clay, without a navigator, struggles on the road and encounters a Spanish-speaking immigrant woman. Unable to understand her, he continues driving. Later, he sees a drone in the sky dispersing something red. Terrified, Clay turns around, but the object in the sky catches up with him and showers the car with propaganda leaflets. When Ruth goes out to sunbathe, Archie swims in the pool. The teenager experiences a surge of hormones, even discreetly photographing a girl, but Rose ruins all the fun. The sister wants to go into the woods to find the previously seen deer. In the forest, they come across an abandoned cabin with a window revealing the neighbor's house. Meanwhile, George arrives at the neighbor's home, taking a gun just in case. Chaos reigns in the yard and the house, with scattered belongings, broken windows, and a flooded floor. Realizing there's no one in the house, George decides to go down to the garage to find something useful. He discovers a satellite phone, but even it doesn't work. Then he goes to the beach behind the house. In the sand, he finds a watch worn on a severed human hand. Looking up, he notices that the entire beach is strewn with items, human bodies, and airplane wreckage. Hearing a loud humming, he looks up to the sky, spotting another plane heading straight towards him. The main character, in fear, runs away. Upon impact, a quite powerful wave forms, shattering all the windows in the house. Returning home, George asks his daughter to bring clean and dry clothes. He confesses to Amanda that when he worked as a financier, he suspected that something like this was coming, so he came to the house away from the city. He reveals that shortly before these events, he noticed strange things in the financial market. Their conversation is interrupted by an incomprehensible noise, nearly driving them mad. In panic, Amanda rushes out into the streets. In the forest, she comes across her children. When the noise subsides, the trio returns home. Gathering together, they discuss the next plan of action. Amanda tells about a man who stocked up on supplies, as if he knew about the impending disaster. George suggests it might be Danny, a construction worker who used to work for him and was obsessed with the idea of an apocalypse. Soon, Clay returns with a pamphlet in hand. Archie says he saw something like this in a game, and the Arabic writing translates to "Death to America." Understanding that all this is not a mysterious coincidence but a planned action, the couple decides to leave the place. They drive along the highway until they encounter a traffic jam with a dozen Tesla cars crashed. Amanda decides to go out and check. When she sees absolutely empty cars, she realizes that the autopilot system was remotely controlled. Spotting another Tesla rushing towards them, Amanda takes the wheel and turns around. Due to her flawed logic, she decides to drive towards the oncoming electric cars instead of waiting on the sidelines. The family returns to George's house, who gladly lets them in. The adult residents gather together, discussing the next plan of action. After some thinking, they understand that hindsight is wiser, so they simply decide to rest. Clay and Ruth smoke weed in the yard, while George and Amanda consume alcoholic beverages. While Ruth stuns Clay with questions about intimacy with college students, Amanda and George discuss the difficult situation that has arisen. He tells about a man with contracts for construction with the Ministry of Defense, having access to top-secret information and communicating with those who control the world. A day before the catastrophe, he requested a significant sum of money. When asked about the impending end of the world, he replied with the phrase, "Take care of yourself." Evaluating all the pros and cons, he decided to leave the city immediately and go to the suburban house. This somewhat saddens Amanda. To lift her spirits, George shows his collection of vinyl records. Amanda prefers hip-hop, and the duo engages in a dance. George reminisces about his wife, who happened to be on a plane during the culmination of yesterday's events, making the chance of survival close to zero. The pleasant evening is interrupted by a deadly noise, just like during the day. Afterward, all the residents go to sleep. In the morning, things get worse. Rose has run away, and Archie fell ill with an unknown disease. The boy lost several teeth, and later uncontrollable vomiting began. The teenager recounts that yesterday, a tick bit him in the woods. George understands that it's likely Lyme disease and suggests going to neighbor Danny, who has medicines for such ailments. George, Clay, and Archie head to the neighbor, while Ruth and Amanda go in search of Rose, who is eager to see deer again. While the women sort out their relationships, the men arrive at Danny's place. He greets the uninvited guests with a shotgun. The duo asks Danny for help, but he refuses, as he stocks supplies for his family. Danny points out that the world has been heading this way for a long time. Over the years, America has done a lot of harm and earned even more enemies. Most likely, they united to bring down the sole superpower of this world. He directs the men to another neighbor, who, according to his information, built an entire underground bunker. The conversation intensifies, turning into a conflict. Clay manages to calm the men down, saying he's willing to do anything for his family. After Clay's words, Danny agrees to sell the medicine for $1,000. While Archie swallows the pills, the men discuss what is happening. Danny is convinced that the country has been attacked. Clay shows him the same postcard, but Danny claims it's all a deception. A few days before the events, his friend, an Iraq veteran, called him. He told about similar postcards, but the inscriptions there were in Korean. Already sitting in the car, George says that the acquaintance from higher circles of society mentioned that all of this is planned and will proceed in 3 stages. Firstly, cut off all communication across the country, then mentally oppress and misinform the population. And finally, completely destabilized people will start fighting among themselves, thereby resolving everything that was planned. Meanwhile, Amanda and Ruth come across a herd of deer. The girls try to scare off the animals with screams, and after a while, they manage to do so. While wandering through the forest in search of Rose, the duo witnesses a horrifying scene. Across the river, a city is visible, over which several mushroom clouds rise from a nuclear explosion. Meanwhile, Rose greedily eats supplies in the neighbor's empty house. Later, she descends to the basement, where there is everything necessary to survive the apocalypse. Amidst the abundance of food and water, she notices a collection of discs, including her favorite TV show, Friends. With a satisfied expression, the girl plays the last episode of Friends. The film ends, but the apocalypse continues.